Brilliance Audio presents Tomboyland by Melissa Faliveno, performed by the author. A few years ago, I went out for drinks with a new friend. We'd met at a mutual friend's birthday party, and this was our first time out alone. When I showed up to the bar, a dimly lit oyster spot in Brooklyn, I quickly realized she thought we were on a date. She wore a semi-transparent white shirt and bright red lipstick, her long hair falling in dark curls around her shoulders. She was attractive. We sat at the bar and talked. She flirted. I tried not to. I downed a drink and some oysters, then ordered another round. The bar was packed and hot. I peeled off my sweater, and dabbing the sweat off my neck, worked up the nerve to say what I needed to. "So," I started. "I should tell you." She leaned in closer. When we'd first arrived, she had pulled my chair, with me on top of it, closer to hers. It was a bold move, and one I couldn't help but admire. Our knees were almost touching. "I'm in a relationship," I said with a grimace. "A committed one." "Ah," she said, leaning back a little. A flash of disappointment in her eyes, her chin dipped in a slow nod of recognition. But she smiled. "Well, that's okay," she said. "The thing is," I went on, procrastinating, searching the bottom of my glass for any sweet remnant of whiskey that might be hiding in the ice, "it's with a man." To say I watched her face fall would be an understatement. It plummeted headlong off a cliff into a swamp of disbelief and despair. "No," she said, stretching out the moan of the O as she turned from me toward her drink, poured what was left of it down her throat, then planted her elbows on the bar and held her head in her hands. It was an inflated gesture, partly for comic effect. My new friend was funny. But her surprise was genuine. "No way," she said, shaking her head. I nodded, my stomach tight with regret. Not for the fact itself, but for the thought of disappointing this new person whom I liked so much. This funny, queer woman who I hoped might be my friend. I felt an old, familiar fear, that she would no longer want anything to do with me, now that she knew the truth. She looked at me, shook her head, and said, "I can't believe you're straight." The night we first met, my partner, John, was sure I was gay. And for what it's worth, I assumed the same of him, which makes for a pretty funny story to tell at parties. I don't talk about my sexuality or gender identity much. I've never felt particularly connected to a certain identity, nor has any language ever quite seemed to fit. And where I come from, we're not raised to talk about ourselves, let alone our sexual proclivities or gender identities. I had never even heard the term gender identity until late in college, when I took a bold leap and enrolled in a women's studies class. It hadn't occurred to me that a person had a gender identity, let alone that it might be in conflict with their biological sex. I'm not straight, and my gender identity is complicated. I never really had a coming out, in part because I never thought I had the right, and in part, as difficult as it is to admit, because I'm still terrified to say some things aloud. But it's also because I so often feel like I don't have the words. There are words I use sometimes, words like bisexual, which attempts to define who I am attracted to and who I seek intimacy from. Words like genderqueer or simply queer, which attempts to define the ways my body doesn't conform to traditional notions of gender. I use these words because they're the best words I have. But sometimes they make me uneasy. And sometimes I feel like I'm still seeking the words that fit, that feel more right, that might help me feel like I belong.